Hey guys, this is Bearwire for HUSNG.com, and I'm here with Skates. Say hi, Skates.
Hi.
And we are making a series here about transitioning from heads up cash to heads up sit and goes. This, I guess, could also be doubled as like a sit and goes from the basics. And this is just an introduction to give you guys an idea of what we'll be doing over the next couple videos and hopefully help you guys adjust to playing with shorter stacks. So what we want to start with here is a couple of myths that I guess we need to dispel about heads up sit and goes. Most importantly being that since this is a tournament structure, people would imagine that we need to play like it's a tournament, like losing the tournament is the end of the world, and every hand that we play, we should be, focusing on whether or not we or our opponent could be knocked out. And I guess we should just discuss briefly why this may not be a factor by nature of being a two-person tournament. So what this first point is here is that chip EV is equal to dollar EV in a heads-up sit and go, unlike a three-handed or nine-handed or 45-handed sit and go. I suppose, Skates, do you want to give maybe a more mathematical breakdown here?
Sure. So a lot of people, when they talk about sit and goes, like to talk about ICM being independent chip model, if any of you guys are familiar with that term. And they like to, and traditionally when talking about it in that respect, you're always trying to maximize your dollar yield given the potential results, like you taking second or third or fourth or fifth. And there ends up being some very non-intuitive plays in those multi-handed games. Here, if you get all of the chips, it's worth all of the money. So there's no ICM calculations coming into play. So since chip EV is the same as dollar expectation, your plays in a cash game versus your plays in a sit and go ends up being the same. You're trying to make the highest chip expectation play. Yeah.
Right. Perfect. So, with that in mind, I guess there's essentially in the hands that we'll be discussing and the hands that you guys will hopefully be playing, there's no difference between a 50 big blind hand in a sit and go and a 50 big blind hand in a cash game. These are identical situations with a fixed stack depth, and the biggest difference we'll encounter in sit and goes is just that you'll have to deal with a lot of different stack depths, and if it lasts long enough, you'll be dealing with some extremely short stack depths.
Yep,
so,
pretty much. There is one very, very subtle difference, which I wrote an article about a while ago, which was about actually had to do with optimizing growth in heads of sit and goes, and that's a free article on HUSNG.com. But we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get there.
Cool. So with respect to the end game of a heads-up sit and go, we see this second myth is that heads-up sit and goes in the end are just a game of flipping. And it seems that even some extremely good heads-up cash players are under the impression that short stack play is literally a chart-following coin flip with a load of variance. And what I want to load up here is a blog entry from 2008 when A.E. Jones was pretty much the man in heads up cash, or probably thought he was. And not to dispel any credit from a head coach of a respected poker site, but as you guys...
I like this quote. He says, HUSNGs are like drugs. There's seriously no skill, pure monkey shove fest where it's constant gambling and swings within every hand. Yeah. Awesome. And even the guys that are multi-table you are absolutely atrocious. That's great. So just putting a data point out there, this is true across game types. If you're new to the game and there's someone there who's a regular, and that regular is massively multi-tabling you, he probably has an edge on you. So
that's a safe assumption.
This is... While we may not be as good in some of the traditional forms, so like, if we were to play 100 big blinds with A. Jones, like, yes, he's going to be better than us. If we're playing 20 big blinds, you can be damn sure that as a sit and go player is going to be a lot better. And you have to think about some of the things that in those game types you're not as familiar with.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting even here at the bottom, he acknowledges that he's marginal at best with 15 to 20 big blinds, but somehow believes that the players that he's playing against are atrocious at this stack size that he's marginal at. And
Another fun little tidbit there is if someone who's a very good player is doing something that you don't understand, it's probably because they understand something about you that you don't.
yeah.
So I know I'm one of those people that does absolutely wacky, zany things and makes me look terrible sometimes, but obviously there's a reason I do them.
Yeah.
But I wonder if I'm one of those people he's talking about. Anyway.
It's very possible.
September 2008, it's definitely possible.
Random donks playing the 5Ks. Yeah. Anyways, let's see if we can get this back up. All right. So from here we have sort of a preview of what hopes to be a solid multi-video series that we have coming up, and each one of these bullet points will be expressed in detail in the upcoming videos, and those of you dedicated viewers who get through all of them will hopefully get a lot out of them. But just to briefly go through, some of the things that need to be worked on when you're moving from cash into heads-up sit-and-goes. Notably, and like I said, the largest difference is that you'll be facing a large variety of stack sizes, and something somewhat subtle that needs to be paid attention to is that every change in stack size can affect the number of streets that are left in play. If that's not clear, what I mean is like making a continuation bet on the flop, you might only be left in a heads-up sit-and-go with the turn. After you make your continuation bet, there might only be enough chips left to play one more street. Whereas in a cash game, you're always playing with 100 big blinds, or at least very often, and a two-street game never really exists. So this is, I guess, sort of unique to the short stack situations, that there's sort of fewer variables, and that changes how you play in every situation.
Yeah, it's not a matter of the number of streets declining as much as the number of rounds of betting has decreased dramatically.
Right, exactly, yeah.
So, a lot of people don't understand how that needs to change your ranges, and we'll go into that.
Cool.
And of course, that extends all the way to pre-flop. So
Yeah.
pre-flop ranges will change dramatically depending on what your stack depth looks like, both in and out of position. And out of position might be even the more fun of the two to talk about, because that's in particular one where cash game players fail to make correct adjustments for heads-up sit-and-goes.
Yeah, absolutely. The the amount of different things you can go through. I mean, you're going to be dealing with a variety of different sizing choices, a variety of different options, whether that be 3-bet shoving or 3-betting small or 3-betting large, and running a go and all sorts of fun things.
So of course, when those pre-flop ranges change, simultaneously you have all those changes in what the 3-bet frequencies and 4-bet frequencies need to look like, and with what types of hands you do them with. So all of that becomes a huge cluster of interesting things that cash game players won't make the right adjustments when switching to heads-up sit-and-goes.
Yeah.
And of course, it all affects C-bet frequency, C-bet sizing, how comfortable or how strong of a hand you need to have in order to get your stack in.
Right.
And,
That's exactly here. It might be counterintuitive to a cash game player who's used to, for example, checking back the flop with middle pair, mid kicker, because for pot control reasons, and there's 100 big blinds and they're not comfortable getting so much money in. Whereas if you're playing with 20 big blinds, that's somewhat ludicrous, because the different stack depth. I don't want to be too general, but
even more than that, just like being comfortable getting in with bottom pair and a good kicker on the flop, because oftentimes it's right.
Right, exactly.
That's
very counterintuitive to cash game players.
It's a fun game.
Something I struggled with a lot, and I'm fairly certain that I can work you guys through the same tiresome process that I'm going through of getting used to all the intricacies that we're talking about here. Just this last point, so I don't miss it, is that a fairly large difference, even when you're playing at 50 or 75 big blinds, whatever the first level of the structure you're playing is. A lot of heads-up sit-and-go players min-raise at every stack at every stack depth.
Yeah.
Pretty much every button open they're min raising, and that's something that cash players don't see a lot. A lot of cash players, even high profile cash players like Victor Blom, complain about min raising because they think it's boring or they think it's I guess overly exploitative. I don't really know what the I don't know what the complaint is really, but it's something that really you just need to get used to, and it changes a lot of how you play out of position.
Yeah, so of course when you're playing really deep, if you have like multiple hundreds of big blinds, the reason why you need to raise more pre-flop is you need to find some way to get your stack in over the course of 3 streets while you're in position. But if you only have 50 big blinds out there, you can get your stack in min raising pre.
Exactly.
So that's a lot of the best heads up sit and go players just min raise at every level, and when cash game players aren't used to handling that and how that needs to affect their ranges, they end up making the wrong adjustments. So that'll be fun to talk about.
Yeah, exactly. All right. And there are a few things that we want to discuss that will not be changing, just so that I think that a lot of times when players move into a new format, they just start to doubt themselves about everything, but there's really the basics that we want to make sure that you guys are holding on to, because this is just like, these are things that you just think about in every format of poker.
Yeah, it's still poker, it's still a gambling game, it's still a betting game.
Right, so, basic adjustments, like just making obvious adjustments. You don't need someone to tell you that if your opponent's folding, 80% of their hands pre-flop, like you should still be raising pre-flop, like when you have 7-2.
Easy game.
Yeah, and I guess this is a little bit general, but like the idea that we should be playing, almost all or probably all of our hands in position, the idea that we should be continuation betting a lot, and the idea that out of position we should be playing fewer hands. This holds true across game types, because these are just situations that are forced upon you by the way that position works. I mean,
yeah, it's a fact of having a position-based betting game.
Right.
So a lot of the skills, it's not like it's a completely new game type. Like, you're going to have skills from cash games, and you're going to have a lot of theory about poker. It's just a matter of cleaning up some of the places where you might not be thinking about it as clearly as you think you are. Yeah, right on.
Yeah, cool. I guess this last point. This is something we talked about a little before, and this is somewhat of a stylistic choice, but I think the important takeaway here is that we're continually making our adjustments as we get reads, and different people sort of have like a set approach when they enter a game, sort of like your default plays to let yourself accumulate reads, to let yourself sort of, I guess, play as well as you can against someone you don't know. And for a lot of people, I think the safe approach for that is to continue with like mostly value ranges pre-flop, to continue with I guess things where you're not stuck making decisions that you're somewhat clueless about. Maybe that's not the best way to put it, but
well, yeah, we talked about this briefly just because I said I disagreed with this statement, but I don't actually disagree with the idea that you should 3-bet and 4-bet mostly for value. It was more of a, that's the safe way to play, and it's very, very close to being optimal, I think, specifically for playing lower stakes and learning. The places where it starts to break down is when you play a random player at high stakes. They almost always have some history with someone, and you can assess something about them.
Right.
However, in general, I like it, and we'll have more things to talk about in the future. So,
cool.
Yeah, 3-betting and 4-betting, I'm sure we'll have a lot to say.
Yeah, definitely. All right.
This was a brief introduction. Hope you guys stick with us.
This has been Bear Wire and Skates, and see you guys next time.